Check 1 2. Is my audio fine? Greek. Where are you, Greek? What is orama? Vision. Okay, so that's what it means on the trailer. Mic check again. Let me hear myself on YouTube. Da-da-dum. Okay, cool. So, okay. Come on, speak. I want to hear myself. Okay, cool. So, okay. Awesome. I'm able to hear myself. Sorry for that, guys. Just double checking. All right. Thank you for coming. My name is Vito Gunhilder, and I'm here to talk about Para-Bellum Wargaming. I love the lore and the factions in the game. Okay, cool. So, okay. And I really want to shut myself up right now. Okay, cool. And I want to talk more about the introductions that are given, because recently we've got the city-states released, and Sorcerer Kings are probably coming out like autumn, maybe December of this year. Let's start off with the 100 Kingdoms. Oh, also, let me see, on the chat, we had Anfam. Hey, thank you for coming over. I'm glad to have at least one person in the audience. Your answers for the trivia questions. Agam, indeed. That is the correct answer for the first question that I asked. What is the word that means importance or weight in the Dwegum language? The other question, the triumvirate gods of the Old Dominion are Cleon, Ninua, and Haslia. And then my final question was a region famous for their men-at-arms in the 100 Kingdoms. In the spotlights, if you check out the Para-Bellum website, the spotlights include several of the regions and what kind of specialties they've got. The first one that's known for men-at-arms and their training is the Illyrian Plains on the southwest. And then the second region that apparently has men-at-arms at equal training, or like that can challenge the Illyrian men-at-arms, is in Galania, Transinia. I'll show you guys what that place looks like in a bit, but that's where my personal narrative faction usually is at. Let's watch the teaser trailer for the 100 Kingdoms.
"100 Kingdoms, a fitting origin from a prophetic term. Those words were the beginning of the end for the Old Dominion, for the Lord fell. Haslia the Redeemer, the one that united humanity and forged the dominion of man, would scatter it, divide it, break it. More than 6 centuries have passed. Will humanity's anathema prove to be its salvation? 100 kingdoms, yes. 100 sovereigns, each with their own gods and knights. 100 walls, filled with armies trained and willing. 100 banners, 100 chances to unite, as they had done before. Or not. There will remain 100 voices, squabbling around the hollow throne. 100 vultures feasting on the carcass of an empire. 100 secrets untold. 100 lies of one god or of many. 100 fools. For from the shadows, we are watching.
You are here to remember. An emissary of sorts for the short-lived and the forgetful. Beware, pup. You walk among the memories of the worthy, but yours is written water. It flows and swirls around truth, unable to grasp it. Follow us. Go deeper. The truth lies past the surface, in the darkness. Yes, you begin to see. We bent the elements to our will. We gave life to the forge. But in the light of your torch, you see how we earned our freedom. We broke the world and set it aflame. The elders die hard and had to die first. Our weapons' thirst was sated on the younger ones and those that served them still. We learned long ago, pup, freedom can only come through war. And as the drums of your petty conflicts echo like your footsteps in our halls, we hear the call. We will answer. We will remind you. We are the firstborn of war, and we were never gone. We are coming.
I love the Wargames trailer. Okay, so going over with the Wargames trailer here. And yeah, fam, I don't know why, but there's like a delay for my recording. I'm not sure if you, because I'm looking at it from my end when I turn on YouTube and like hit play on my own videos, and it's as if I have like 15-second delay. I'm not sure why it's not 100% just a direct video, but I guess I'm gonna have to deal with that. Let's see. What year? That year is the same as the Northern Crusade. Yep, 313 AR. PR is the current day settings. AR is before the fall. The year of the Northern Crusade, actually 313 AR was not the exact year for when they went out to destroy Yggdrasil. It was around 10 years after that time. So around 300 AR that they finally amassed the troops, sent over, and started the invasion. But yeah, it's essentially that time. I don't remember if the companion book had a name for that Kalasor who received that message, but it's good to know that now. It's Kalasor Kaiser or something like that. I don't know if it's a reference to a historical person in particular. I don't think so. It just seems more like a generic Kalasor's name. But anyway, going back to the Wargames trailer. This is actually a reference to a story on the Para-Bellum website. I'm forgetting what it's called, but on Spotlight for the Wargames, I think it's on the Wargames side. It's not on the 100 Kingdoms Spotlight. But there was a spotlight under the Wargames that told of a man, a scholar, who visited the Wargames holds, trying to learn more about the history of the world through the Wargames' eyes, because the Wargames are the elder races. They probably remember. And that's what we're seeing here with him looking at these frightening images for himself. In that same lore, though, said young man, this scholar, where is he? This scholar right here was killed. He died. The Wargames find him and they execute him. But they did read his papers, which he's carrying right here, the things that he was writing down. So, at least, I'd say most of his notes got passed along to the 100 Kingdoms, but the rest were burned by the Wargames. Sad man. I mean, he did pretty good. He apparently was from the Rus? I don't know, something like that. What's interesting to me about what the Wargames is saying at this point, we built the world. We formed it. Okay, that's a pretty big claim, but you can see some kind of truth to it. Perhaps they were part of the primordial force, in a way, that reshaped the lands, created the mountains on their quest for vengeance against the dragons of the time. And they were so good at killing the dragons that there's only 2 left, really. Maybe 3. The 2 dragons that are definitely still alive in the Aya setting are the Cosmo dragons. There are 2 of them. And their entire purpose, there's a white one and a black one. Their entire purpose is essentially protecting Aya from extraterrestrial or alien invasion. Specifically, there is a faction that might come out in like 5 years' time called the Celestial and the Abyssal Hosts. These are the children of creation and destruction, I think, if I remember correctly. They're the people that the spires were running away from. And we'll get over to their... I'll explain a bit more of their lore on another section, I think. But anyway, this part about them, the Dwegum, reforming the earth. If that's true, I want to know, are they, like... Were they in other continents? The current continent of the world of Para-Bellum, let me see, is known as Surtoris. 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 And then the land north is Mannheim. So these are the 2 continents that we know thus far. But the way that the Dwegum speak, it's as if they know... it's as if they formed the world. So does that mean that they exist in other continents? If so, I mean, that would be pretty cool. It would make a lot of sense, but I wondered how their culture would change. Like, for example, if there was ever the Asian continent, if ever there was such a thing in this world, with the Asian factions over there, would they have Dwegum that are influenced by that kind of culture, that kind of feel? I can't remember any Asian mythologies regarding dwarves, though. Oh wait, never mind. I remember. I know some Filipino mythology for dwarves. What other thing can we speak about with the Dwegum? In terms of their lore, they are the disciples of war. Before they became the Dwegum, they were born as dwarves. And now there's a huge difference between dwarves and Dwegum. Dwarves were created by the dragons specifically to serve them. So dwarves are servants of the dragons. The Dwegum, why they call themselves such, is because the dwarves that continued to dig deeper and deeper into Aya's mantle, or the earth, as they dug deeper, they eventually encountered the chamber where War, one of the 4 horsemen, pieces of the primordial creation and destruction. I know I'm saying a lot of things. For those who don't understand, just bear with me right now. They found the horseman War, deep within the mantle of Aya, and they became his disciple, basically drawing from him the strength they need to break their own personalities in a way. They became unbalanced, which gave them the power to cast magic, and also made them really, really strong enough to start crafting weapons and start killing the dragons. And those dragons were super powerful. They're so strong that they managed to basically 1v1 the spires. The dragons versus the spires, and the dragons almost came up on top. I think both sides were just so attritioned that they had to declare a ceasefire. Until the Dwegum came by and did the job for both sides. Killed the dragons until only one mortal dragon is left. Now I say mortal, but I'm not sure if it's still actually alive. There's a faction that's coming out called Hela, or Hell. Let's see, in Project 8, right over here. This faction. This is where the descendants of the last dragon comes from. Up in Mannheim with the Nords. Okay, let me just double check the chat and see if my YouTube is still going. Here. Alright. It seems like I'm still audible. Okay. Moving on to the next piece then. If you guys have any questions, please just go ahead and write it down. I'd be more than happy to answer to the best of my abilities. And I'll try to see if I can provide sources for each of them as well. Next up we have Mannheim, also known as the Nords.
Mannheim. They call it an icy hell, where the wind can flense your flesh to the bone, and a storm claim you, before your body can touch the ground. They call it a land of beasts, where man hunts, and is hunted in turn. They call it a womb of monsters, where savagery and might alone ensure dominance. Yet the name remains Mannheim. And the fools never ask, what kind of men could claim this land?
Okay, so Mannheim, also known as the Nords. I don't know exactly what Mannheim would directly translate to, but just listening in on that trailer, what kind of men would own these lands. So in other words, I think Mannheim would just mean the land of men. That's my own interpretation. I'm not going to delve too much into it. I'm not going to use Google Translate right now. Now the Nords. As a 100 Kingdoms player, I main the Old Dominion, but I use the 100 Kingdoms myself. My narrative army belongs to the north as well. I do not like the Nords where they are currently in terms of the lore. The reason why I say that is because it just seems to me that the Nords are attacking the 100 Kingdoms, especially the northern regions, specifically to pillage, just go a Viking. That's totally fine in terms of a fantasy fictional setting. I mean, I'm not going to get butthurt over fictional people dying. But I'm just saying, when people start justifying that the Nords are there to trade, I'm like, yes, but how did they open up the trades? It's just my perspective. The Nords are still a really cool faction. What I like most about the Nords is that they are... their entire setting is it's so monstrous. How do you say this? It's like everywhere you go, there's something that's hunting you, and not just you. The setting itself, the ice, everything is trying to kill you. Whether it's the weather or something that's actually alive and trying to survive, just as you. Everything in Mannheim is. Can you survive, or will you be predator, or will you be prey? It's actually kind of similar to the Wadrun, but of course the Wadrun take place in the wastelands, so we're thinking savanna, whereas the Nords take place in the north. And also they do a lot of ships. They do a lot of they travel a lot by ship. Let's see. There was that one scene that I really like, the guy jumping. Here it is. This image of a guy jumping up, and I like this one. I don't know about you guys, but when I look at the art for Ea, for the Conquest Last Argument of Kings, there are some art pieces that I'm just like, wow, where did they come up with this? And this is one of them. And I like the added detail. I know it's really blurry probably for you guys right now. It's blurry for me too, but there's this added detail, this Jarl. I think this has got to be a Jarl. He has a rope tied to his waist. For some reason it's put all the way up here, so does that mean he tied himself to the mast and then went down and then did this leaping attack? Either way, this brave Nordic warrior tied himself to this boat and would leap out to strike at a sea Jotnar, go into pure melee with him, expecting this tiny little axe to do some kind of damage. I'm like, you have to have a culture so heavy in hero worship that you would even think about doing something like that. Me, if it was me, give me a spear, man. Give me the longest spear you've got, the heaviest spear. Let me go at it. But I would not go that close with an axe this relatively small. Like, what kind of damage will you do against this thing? The best you can do is maybe pick out an eye, but you're never going to deal lethal damage. At least in my opinion, if it's just a 1v1. But again, since this is a fantastical world, it's more than possible. But just the image of this, as much as I don't like the Nords in terms of current lore until Hell comes out, images of heroism is always inspiring. Moving on to the next trailer. If you guys have any questions, let me just check. He is an Einherjar. Which one? This the dude that just did the leap? This no. Where is it? Yeah, I think it's the guy who did the leap, right? Is that what you're talking about? Is it the guy who did the leap? Is that Oddbjorn? I don't think that's how it ended though. So in terms of lore, let's go back to 300 AR. When Haslia ordered the legions to go out, he sent out 4 legions. So that's about 40,000 men. Because lore-wise, unlike the Roman legions of our historical sense, the Roman legions had about 5,000 trained warriors. No, actually a little less than 5,000 because they had to have slaves and other people to carry around the luggage. So like maybe 4,200 actual fighting warriors. Compare that to Aya's version of the legions. Aya's version of the legions were 10,000 actual warriors. Because they had something called the bread. Not bread as in pan or whatever it is that you eat. That's not the kind of bread I'm talking about. I'm saying BRED. Bread, as in humanoid animals. Things like minotaurs, centaurs, satyrs. Half human, half animalistic hybrids. They were gifted by the Spire to the Old Dominion of the time to give them it was just given as a gift, like a gesture of goodwill. That's what it was. But in reality, the Spires had basically given them a certain kill code. When the Old Dominion would begin to rely on the bread as their means for production, they'd forget things like agriculture and such. Then the Spires, when they're ready to destroy the Old Dominion, would just hit the kill switch, and basically all of the bread would just die due to a random disease. And then the economy of the Old Dominion would collapse, and then they would be easy to destroy with the Spire's creations. That didn't quite happen. But anyway, what was I going along with this? The four lost legions. There were 40,000 men sent north. 40,000 trained fighting men, plus whatever they're using to carry the supplies, probably the bread. So that means that Yggdrasil held out against 40,000 strong, and that would have included the Einherjar, but they didn't, because the Einherjar remained asleep. And because the Einherjar woke up after Ragnarok, they found that Mannheim was, at the time, controlled by Jotnar, the giants. And it became like Jotunheim or something like that. They called it something similar to whatever it was in Norse mythology when the giants ruled the earth. And I think it's so cool that they would have this battle, but it didn't last that long. The Jotnar woke up after Ragnarok, which is 300 AR. Yes. Yeah, okay. So they woke up after Ragnarok, And then they continued fighting the Jotnar until such a time as the modern day. So, and their Svarthgam, there was a guy from the Nords who invaded the 100 Kingdoms. Where is it? The 100 Kingdoms was invaded by... I'll use this, I guess. The 100 Kingdoms had an invasion that made this region called Northmen. The Nords came by, took over a lot of this space, and killed a lot of people. Specifically, the Order of the Sword faced a lot of deaths during this campaign. And it was led by one Einherjar named Svarthgalm. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Really cool name, though. He has this awesome image. I want to see it. Nords. This image right here. Art gallery. Where? This Svarthgam. This guy's freaking awesome. I mean, he looks great. I hate him as a 100 Kingdoms player and lore guy. I hate him because these are all Order of the Sword. Hate him. But he still looks really cool. I mean, it's funny that it's a 100 Kingdoms person who actually painted this thing. But anyway, this guy came by about 200 years before the current setting, did a whole bunch of stuff, was killed. But the point is that, the Einherjar, if they had actually woken up to defend Yggdrasil right over here, then things would definitely have been different. Alright, let's see. Next up, let's go over and watch the Wadrun. This one is full of lore.
We have kept our end of the deal for centuries. It is time for you to honor yours. We are claiming our due. Your dead come. We care not for the fate of your empire. We will deal with your kings. For we are the Wadrun. Your people will know that we crossed the gates. Your only choice today is to open them, or run and tell them that we did. Either way, all must know. The gates are open. The Wadrun are here!
Alright, so let's see here. First off, going back into the lore where this might be taking place. Where are you? World Wadrun, here we go. The Tale of the Mockingbird. Now, I'm not the kind of person who reads every single lore, but enough. When I get curious, that's when I start reading more. But the Tale of the Mockingbird was a very interesting one to read. Oh, Flying Hummingbird, not the Mockingbird. That's another book, a real one. Okay, Tale of the Flying Hummingbird tells the story of this one dude who was a consort to the Ufun Kazane, whatever they called the matron of the Wadrun. And the guy was like, I'm taking our people and we're moving west. And so he and the cowboys went ahead, and that's what we just saw. I think it's so cool to see that this piece of lore on 2022, when did this come out? A year ago. Oh, well, okay, maybe they both were created at the same time, or like meant to tie together. But it's cool to see that this piece of lore is actually animated. We saw what happened, because this story itself tells just the life of this one dude and his journey, well, his desire to move westward. Basically, it ends with him leading them west, up to a point where they meet the gates. And then we see this trailer, and they're at the gates. Now, what makes something interesting about this trailer that does ask a lot of questions. First off, why is the Crimson Tower. I'm pretty sure this is a Crimson Tower member because they have this awesome looking sun thing and they have the red mantle. Could be a different person. I mean, if we consider the model for the Crimson Tower, it definitely doesn't look like this. If this is how the Ashen Dawn look, that'd be pretty cool. Assuming that this guy is Ashen Dawn, then we'll assume that this guy is Ashen Dawn. I wonder what happened here.
It's time.
This part, his eyes of the trailer. I think this must be Ashen Dawn. I think this is interesting because the Ashen Dawn order of the orders is meant to be. It's a position held by life. I was asking previously to the lowriders, hey guys, could order members, could they retire from the orders? Are they allowed to start families? And they answered yes. Every members of the order can retire, and they're not like prohibited from having families, except if you're part of the Ashen Dawn. So like seeing these bright eyes, in my opinion, I think that's just a hint of what it means for a member of the Ashen Dawn to have the Blessed special rule. If you play the game, there is a rule called Blessed, which is a very strong one. It basically almost guarantees your hits and almost guarantees your defense. And this guy just having these eyes just shows a little bit of like, yes, there is some kind of divine influence there. But something that was told as well, this Wadrun, apparently the orders, not the 100 Kingdoms, but specifically the orders, had a deal with the Wadrun for centuries. The Wadrun were released at around the year 150. Yes, 150 AR. In the year 151, there was something known as the Battle of the Wastes. The predecessors to the orders fought against the last legion, which is the predecessor of the orders, fought against legions sent by the Old Dominion to basically have them heal, to beat them down. But they resisted and they survived. At that time of the Battle of the Wastes, another campaign was brewing. It was between the Dwegum and the Spires. Let's see. Here we go. There was a war between the Spires and the Dwegum at a time when the Old Dominion was essentially crumbling apart. And at that time, the Wadrun were released to combat the Dwegum, and most of the Wadrun were killed except for the matron queen that they had and some of her children. Basically, they repopulated from there. But I think it's interesting how even after all that, the Wadrun had somehow created a deal with the orders. It's not specified when that happened, but I really want to know why, like how that would have happened. There was a time with the Wadrun, in one of the Wadrun stories, that tells of the Ufun Kazane, this one, during Charles Armatellum. I think, but I'm not sure if this movement west by the Hummingbird, is it a deal made with the orders that would allow them passage westward after centuries of service holding back the Old Dominion? Or is that is it a deal with Charles Armatellum himself, the first emperor, the uncrowned emperor of the great Telian dynasty, which is the great empire that was the 100 Kingdoms before they fractured again. So if it's that though, if it was made Charles Armatellum, then it's interesting because that would mean that the 100 Kingdoms have no right to say that the Wadrun can't be in their lands. But at the same time, if it's a deal with the order specifically, then we do have some issues there. And I wonder if this is going to create a conflict between the orders and the nobility. Once again, I mean, we already have a list of issues between the two in terms of bad blood, but here's another one, I guess. Okay, as an Old Dominion player, I see this and I'm like, dang, man. Why you gotta do my Ziliarch so that bad? Why my Ziliarch? There was an awesome image that shows a duel between a Predator and an old Dominion guy. I wonder where it is. Is it here? Where is it? The duel. There's this awesome image. I don't think it's here. Oh, see, it's this guy's head. Whoever this guy was, I feel so sad. But anyway, to think that a Ziliarch would lose to any of the characters of the Wadrun variety, I'm just saying. But the Old Dominion player must have been really new. He doesn't know what he was doing, because you don't lose. A Ziliarch does not lose in a duel against any of the Wadrun characters. Tell me how in the world does Ziliarch with like 7 wounds lose against a Predator which has 5 or 6? But the Ziliarch has Gladiator. You've got Flurry, which rerolls hits. You got Deadly Blades, which deals 2 damage per 6s on the enemy's defense, that hurts a lot, especially in a duel. And he has Parry, yeah, which forces the enemy to reroll once to hit. In other words, just outside of gaming table terms, the Ziliarch is a monster in a duel, and the Predator is not quite that overpowered. So I'm not sure how this happened. I am not sure how that happened. If it was a duel, it makes sense if the Wadrun had overpowered his regiment, but man, that still makes me sad. But yeah, a lot of people love the Wadrun because of the dinos. The dinos right there. This is the only tabletop wargame I've seen thus far that actually uses a scientifically imaged Tyrannosaurus Rex. I mean, they call it an apex. They call it an apex predator. But the fact is that this thing has feathers. It looks almost like a giant chicken. Apparently, okay, guys. For those of you who are listening through the who are listening and are part of the Discord, you might notice that there's a chicken emoji on the Para-Bellum website that we use often. This Tyrannosaurus Rex is basically what it's referencing. It's a giant feathered chicken, and it's pretty angry. Let's see. Looking at my chat. Do you think the Wadrun will fight with 100 Kingdoms in the future for some reason? Like, they want the land to subjugate, but most of them with the... Yeah. Okay, so... Yes, the Wadrun will definitely, like what he said in the trailer, they will have to deal with the kings of the 100 Kingdoms. How that will be done is, like, up to the tribes that went with him. If we read through the Rismark campaign, one of King Frederick's allies, a guy named King Otto Brand, he has Wadrun in his lands. They're mostly keeping away from each other, but they hear their songs every night, and they're wondering why they sound so like rapturous every single night. In other words, yeah, they're like the Wadrun. Once they're away from the Ukun Fazan's control, once they're away from Mother, they just go crazy. And when I say crazy, I mean like debauchery. Let's see. Oh, they'll definitely. Okay, so what I'm seeing with the Wadrun that have passed the mountainside, I think a good amount of them will actually go to serve King Matthias of the Polmag Principalities. They'll be serving as mercenaries. Basically, they want to win money because that's what they understand these Western civilizations want. They'll win money so they can buy their lands. But then there will be other tribes who, of course, will just go ahead and just take the land, own it for themselves until someone stronger than them challenges their sovereignty. And then there will be others, like I'm sure that this guy, the Mockingbird dude, the Flying Hummingbird, he probably wants to do a more diplomatic approach and integrate into the 100 Kingdoms. Maybe even like serve as an ambassador. You know what? Now that I think about it, yeah. It was also confirmed in one of the chats with the lore writers that apparently every faction in this game has embassies in other factions. So in a way, I think this is that embassy. It's not like they didn't clarify what the embassy is or who the embassy, like who leads that embassy. But this guy, the flying hummingbird dude, he's probably the emissary of the Ukun Fazan. Moving on to the next video, my favorite faction, Old Dominion.
It was the glory of mankind. Its dominion. All the tribes and all the creeds united. Until their own maddened god sought to destroy them. Aslia fell, and the Old Dominion died. Broken and drowning in the realm of death, Aslia's lingering wrath called upon all those who would listen to its final creed. His maddened will crawled into legions of those sworn to him. And not even his broken pantheon escaped their oaths. He warned, the Old Dominion died, but was not ended. It was the glory of...
Okay, first off, why are they using the good old, like, cinematic horn, that sort of noise, with this trailer? It just makes it sound so epic. I love the Old Dominion. I love them so much. But anyway, going into the lore for this. The Old Dominion is, unlike the Roman Empire of our history, the Old Dominion is specifically a theocratic nation. There was only one person who was ever at the head, and that's Haslia, the god of the Old Dominion. He also had like two advisors, essentially, Cleon and Ninua, who were technically older than him. They were more primordial, let's just say, compared to Haslia. Though, okay, in terms of lore, we need to know more about Ninua and Cleon, because all we know thus far is that they were older than Haslia, but for some reason they never grew quite as fast or as powerful as him. And they were more than willing to support humanity, but why? Like, what was their purpose, you know? Haslia wanted humanity to worship him because that was his way to power. And when he looked at the skies, he was like, you know what? I want to go out into the stars. I belong out there. I can't be confined here on Ea. Ea, apparently, if you look at the lore, also says that, like, Ea could mean prison. I don't know where that would come from, but sure. Anyway, Ea to Haslia was a prison. He wants to go up to space. That's why he's having these people worship him and amassing power slowly. But what about Cleon and Ninua? Like, how did they receive their worship, and how did they begin? We see Haslia's humble beginnings, but not theirs. Anyway, back to the thing right here. Let's see. The Seeped in Death magic. So, the Dwegum awakened, well, unshackled war, essentially, and they became disciples of war. But, the Old Dominion, one of the other four horsemen was found. One named Death. Haslia, on his time during his fall, was basically okay for a supposedly immortal being. He was about to die, apparently. Haslia, this immortal dying creature being, in the sky right here in the stratosphere, encountered Death, who was basically shackled to between the horizon of life and the eternal death. And yeah, that's where they found each other, because Haslia, who was supposed to be immortal, was about to die. They merged together, whether it was something that was consensual, like did they just go fusion ha, and then the fusion dance? Did they just do that and then became one? Or was it more like Haslia just, in my opinion, I think it makes more sense that Haslia would consume the essence of death, and then he became the ungod, the god of undeath. It was because of Haslia and Death's fusion that the undead came to be. Now there is another place that's coming out soon, right over here, Danonia. Even by the name Targovia, you'd know exactly who's living here. You're thinking Vlad Tepes, also known as Vlad Dracula. And yes, one of the 100 kingdoms, Danonia, belongs there. But according to some sources on Discord, we're not looking at vampires in the sense of the undead. We might be looking at vampires in the sense of a parasite. Yeah, like I guess The Last of Us, except I don't think it's going to be a fungus that controls people. Yeah, we'll also be looking at hemomancy, which is to say blood magic. So yeah, we're looking at really dark Halloween stuff coming out of Danonia. It's gonna be pretty cool. I really want to know, like, yes, if we're gonna come out with this like vampire parasite faction, I really want to know how they would interact with the Hollow Throne, because they're still technically part of the 100 Kingdoms. And the Polmag Principalities were part of the 100 Kingdoms as well, until they decided to basically break off and become their own independent state. It's a really rich state. And then the rest are not part of the 100 Kingdoms, even though they're part of this, like, pizza pie. They're going to be their own faction. Anyway, what was I talking about when it comes to the Old Dominion? Oh yeah, the greatest civilization of mankind. And it fell. Why? Because of an interesting conspiracy. Let's go back to the Living World map. Apparently, right up here, Yggdrasil, in the year 300 AR, when Haslia did the whole build ships, you've run out of men to conquer, there was a big tip-off from the spire right up here. Going back to Norse mythology, there was Odin, there was Loki, there was Hela, Thor, all those dudes. One of the, in Aya's history for the spires, they were basically scientists, Odin and all these other guys. Interestingly, they were given these names because, like, in most spires that we see over here, like their stories, their names are the Fractured Concord. Their names are the Faded Magenta. So then it's interesting how in Yggdrasil these guys have actual, like, name-sounding names. Odin, Loki, so on and so forth. But anyway, TLDR, Loki, a scientist, did not like what they were doing in Yggdrasil in terms of where the research was going. They were creating a supercomputer that could predict the future. Basically, they would know every single conclusion of a battle. They would know exactly what to do. And he just thought it was just, I guess, the sacrifice and, like, the power it would give to one person, specifically the sovereign, the king of all the spires. The power that it would give the sovereign would be too much. And so he sought help to dismantle this one supercomputer project. Who did he turn to? Haslia, which was the leader of the Old Dominion, which stretched all the way down here, all of this land up to the Cloustrine Mountains. It even included the City-States Peninsula, because at that time, these were colonies of the Old Dominion. So that's a lot of land. It's like almost, that's half. That's half of all Satori's. Old Dominion did great. Anyway, they called on Haslia, Loki called on Haslia, give him the tip, the anonymous tip, saying, hey, this is supercomputer thing going over here. If you don't do something about it, your plans are in danger. Haslia sent the 4 legions, did the whole shebang, and yeah. That's what started the domino effect of the fall. Because Haslia at that time stopped responding to prayers. Being such a theocratic state, the Old Dominion, the interesting thing about it is that Haslia was so controlling, so, like, he wanted everything to be exactly in this way, that when he stopped giving out miracles, when he, like, basically went silent for a while, and his Calisaurs, the prophets that they had, couldn't actually perform the miracles that they were expecting, the people essentially began rebelling. in a way, what Hoslia taught them was dependence. He made them dependent on his power. He never really taught them what faith was. And I think that's such an interesting dichotomy. Because the Old Dominion, after its death, is more faithful than the Old Dominion during its life. Oh, one other thing though, something that a lot of people are disappointed in. This awesome image right here of the angels surrounding the fallen divinity. These angels never came to be. In terms of like sculpts, like models on the table for the tabletop game itself, we didn't get these. We thought these would be a unit called the Canefores, but we never got those. Instead, what we got are the ladies, statue ladies. Where are you? Sure. Where are you? Old Dominion. Statue ladies, where are you? Here they are. The Canefores. What we got were these instead. I love what the concept was for these angels with the shield and the long sword. Curved long sword. It's an interesting design. But apparently, from what I remember, they couldn't quite get the sculpts down for these. But they got the ladies. They had these, but for like the bows. They could do those. The team said yes on these, but they couldn't get the male version, which was supposed to be the Canefores. These guys, these angels with the swords, they couldn't get them right because like on the stand base itself, the wings and everything that made these guys look so cool were just too big. It would on that stand they would be too brittle and they wouldn't be able to hold down. They wouldn't stand up properly and they'd be subject to getting scratched or harmed in some way more easily than others. And so they scrapped this design, unfortunately, and we got this. Now, at some point, maybe we'll get an update if things get. I think maybe at some point we will get updates for alternate scalps for the Canefores. I'm hoping that at that time they'll have the skills to be able to do something like this. Something more similar to this, at least, than these statue ladies with spinning tops. What else do I want to speak about for the Old Dominion? Oh yeah, these guys are currently, if I had to say like the threat level, the Old Dominion is the Apocalypse level boss fight right now. Because Hoslia is still out there. Since he's now the ungod, he's literally immortal. At least I hope so. Like in the actual meaning of the word immortal, he should be now. But anyway, his power and his will are separated. His will was restrained by the 100 Kingdoms, put into a place called the Sealed Temple. And his power, Hoslia's power, was essentially put into this pyre, this flaming sky pillar. I don't know if we have an image of the pyre. Okay, well imagine. I guess we'll use this thing as to imagine. A ver. Okay, so using this thing, imagine this to be that pyre. When I say pyre, I mean like a fire, a bonfire area. So Hoslia's power now resides in this pillar of flame that stretches up to the sky. And that's what attracts a lot of the living. So like the Old Dominion can't just survive on dead bodies. They need people, living people, who are driven mad, essentially, from the 100 Kingdoms, from the city-states, wherever they can find people who are driven mad for their lust of power or just seeing visions of Hoslia, etc., etc. And they come over as pilgrims to Capitas, and they provide like bodies, like mortal bodies, to do the work. Alongside, of course, the dead bodies, because when they die, then they become ghosts. What's it called? The Keres and Moroi. But anyway, that's where we're currently at with the Old Dominion. And these guys, the reason why I think they're the biggest threat is because of the fallen divinity. Actual divines compared to the city-states that go into battle and kick butt. Let's see. Doesn't Haslia cannot fully control his army because his mind is fragmented? No, he's not. He's not fragmented. It's more like Haslia is essentially comatose. That's to say, like, imagine a person who's asleep and cannot wake up. That's kind of Haslia at this moment. His two essence, his two parts, his power and his will, are separated. His will, which would be like the motivating factor, I guess, that's currently trapped by the 100 Kingdoms, specifically the orders. But Haslia's power resides in that pyre, and whenever they want to add more members to fuel Haslia's power, they just bring them over. They throw them into the pit, sacrifice, and that's how his power remains strong, like just through mortal sacrifices and such. And if they need more legionnaires, they bring the body of a legionnaire over to the fire, and then it rises as an actual soldier for Haslia's purpose. But again, like, Haslia himself doesn't command. He just gives them one mission. Well, that's just kill all the living. That's his mission. Now, how the Anointed, which are the leaders of the 100 Kingdoms, how they perceive that goal is completely up to them, and it's based on their experiences with the doctrine of Haslia's faith. Like this guy, the warlord, how he interprets the mission, which is kill all the living, is that he's actually going out there and he's killing the living. He's amassing the only army thus far, like, the only determined army that's going after the living. Her, the seer, how she interprets that is, let me unite everyone in Capitas right now. So, unlike the warlord, she's not trying to actually kill anyone, and she doesn't have an army of her own. But what she's doing is essentially manipulating the other leaders in the background, trying to get them all to follow one single leader so they can actually get going and do the thing that they were made to do, which is kill the living. And then let's watch City States. This is the last of our trailers, and then I'll answer some questions afterwards.
Βάρδε, έπος πλέξε. Δηλώς αργούν οι υπερβόροι. Πλάτωνος,
Okay, just saying. I think these people who are speaking, like the voice actors for this event, might be the people who run Para-Bellum Wargames. For those of you who don't know, Para-Bellum Wargames started off in Greece. I think their like headquarters now, like their business headquarters, is in the UK. And I know for a time their the production team was stationed in Ukraine until the whole Ukraine-Russian war started. So yeah, the business is still going strong, as far as I know. But I'm pretty sure that these voice actors are the ones, are the Greek side of the company.
Tell me, O Muse, of Platon's vision, and of how from one man born was a nation of wisdom. He first saw the oncoming destruction and sought to preserve the erudition of mankind. Bask, Muse, in the glory of the dream, a nation of nations, fueled by gods, designed with wisdom, forged through faith and contained by knowledge. A mosaic of... Alas, perfect dreams lie the loudest as they break. The truth is only whispered in solitude. Sycophants and demagogues supplanted wisdom, while our scientists craved the power of gods, and our gods forgot that hubris is not the privilege of mortals. So now we are broken and warring, but strong. Our dejected and scorned add their might to our armies. Reality bends under the will of our wise, and our gods. We abide no challenge.
Okay, first off, when I first saw this trailer, I was not very impressed by like the animation. and the things that were just going on in the first half. But then when I saw that this shield, this spinning shield, and the effects that were going on, and the music in the background, man, City States felt to me like a hero faction. You could definitely tell there's a lot of love put behind this faction. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Like I said, the headquarters were, well, the people who started Conquest were originally from Greece. So it's totally fine they would have this obvious love for the faction that they've created. I don't hold that at all against anyone. But, okay, going into the lore for all this, what we're seeing over here is very interesting because we don't see often how whenever a new faction is released, they also come out with a 2-player set. And the one that came out with the City States is City States versus Nords. And what we're seeing here is kind of like a tie-in from the products to the actual lore, and now also to the game. And I think that's pretty cool. This is the first time. Well, okay, wait. No, this is the second time they've done it. The first time was with the 100 Kingdoms versus the Spires, which was the first 2-player box set. But I think it's such a cool image. Could you imagine the idea of Vikings ever going down to Greece at a time when Greek hoplites were the premier fighting force of that time? And of course, the Vikings were in their time as well, which is further in the future. So seeing something like this is just so cool. And they're not just Greeks. Let's see. Let's take a look at this thing. They're not just Greeks. They're steampunk Greeks. And that makes all of the difference. One of the questions that I've always had about the Greek about the city states, this faction, is they have to have some kind of advantage over the other factions. And the main advantage that they found, like the video was kind of alluding to, was that the people began harvesting their gods. Their gods are able to produce something called phlogiston, which is essentially like ichor, the blood of gods. And what they use this ichor, this energy for, are things like creating living pieces of armor. Let's see. Providing energy to their cities. Essentially, these gods are literally the life force of the city. You see this guy right here? This the commander at the background with the sword. This guy's arm is normal, but the other arm is mechanical. So that's another thing that makes the city states interesting, is because they have people who may have lost their limbs, but they still function as an important part of important member of their society. They've come out with prosthetics, and not just prosthetics. We're talking steampunk prosthetics, so they're even better. At some point in the future, there might be a time when Shadowrun and Conquest come together, and we'll have like a sci-fi dystopian city-states game. That'd be pretty fun. But yeah, city-states sounds super heroic. They come up with, of course, like what's the underlying issue with this faction. Overall, I think it's a very solid faction. What I really want to know more, though, like with the city-states, is how they'll interact with the future Sorcerer Kings. Taking a look over here in the world map, Project 8. The Sorcerer Kings will be the next faction to come up, probably by the end of the year. They apparently come from archipelagos, or maybe even a continent of their own. It's not 100% guaranteed. But anyway, the fact is, these guys will find Surtoris, the main continent. That's apparently how the storyline goes. But the first people doing so will be on a scouting expedition. And of course, since they're like, if they go to the Old Dominion, they'll find the undead and they'll be crushed, or at least they will not want to land over here. But when they move west and they find the city-states, man, that would mean that the city-states and the Sorcerer Kings will have the first beef of these two, and that will be really cool, because the city-states are literally just sitting on their butts right now. There's really nothing that they're facing against. There's one city over here called Acheron, it's essentially the Sentinel watching against the Old Dominion, and that's cool. They have their own conflict going on, but like everything else in the middle, there's really nothing until the Sorcerer Kings come and we figure out whether it's by war, by the sword, or by the word. There's some war over here as well, the Illyrian Plains, where in Northdin, in these areas, there's raids by the Norse and an integrated multicultural facet, let's just say. The same thing has happened with the Illyrian Plains between the city-states and 100 Kingdoms. So yeah, if you ever think that the 100 Kingdoms is the villain of this story, you're dead wrong. Because the 100 Kingdoms are always on the back foot, apparently. And they're the ones who are integrating these people into their culture rather than the other way around. These guys are bigots because they create borders and they're very particular about who they share their information and especially their technology to. Where the 100 Kingdoms experienced a dark ages, where technology was lost and culture and philosophy, the city-states thrived. They kept all that stuff, and they didn't want to share. There's even a quote somewhere that's like, while we were learning how to print our books, these guys were learning how to create robots. Like this enormous like gap in technology, and they just wouldn't share it. Let me check on the chat and see what else is there. Okay, well, doesn't seem like there's any other questions, and I think that's everything for what I was planning on watching for our city-state stuff. Oh, okay, so I guess one last thing. Orama apparently would mean vision. And I think that's a pretty cool tie-in to what the city-states are all about. They just sit on their butts, but they won't do any like big actions until they know what to do. And I think that makes sense for vision. They know, like, they have a dream of what they're going to accomplish, and then they set out to accomplish it. Anyway, I think that's all for now. There's nothing else I really want to talk about. I'm go ahead and prepare for a match with one of my other friends. I think they'll be asking me for a match in like about an hour on Tabletop Simulator. I might see if I can record that. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. I hope that all future listeners might comment and also leave behind questions of their own. I know that as a lore keeper, I'm not 100% accurate myself. Go ahead and let me know if there are some parts that I'm missing. I know that I won't have all the details, so I'd be happy to learn more. Anyway, that's it from me. Sorry for the noise in the background. Oof. The planes are definitely coming in today. The military should quiet down with their exercises. Anyway, until next time, I'll see you guys then. Ciao, ciao.